This segment of the Chopin podcast is brought to you by the Chopin Foundation of the United States, dedicated to promoting young American pianists and making Chopin's music accessible to all. Chopin sonatas are staples of a concert pianist's repertoire, and interpretations of especially the second and third ones have varied widely over a century and a half as pianists grapple with the rich layers of meaning found in these scores. Luckily, we have Jed Distler here to weigh in on the most outstanding recordings of Chopin's sonatas made in the past century, including the often neglected First Sonata. Jed has listened to untold thousands of piano recordings in his life and written about many of them for Gramophone Magazine and ClassicsToday.com. He is the host of WWFM's weekly radio show Between the Keys, and in 2021, he was the official gramophone blogger of the International Chopin Competition in Warsaw. At the end of each episode of the Chopin podcast, Jed will share his thoughts on an exceptional recorded cycle of the given genre, as well as a memorable recording of an individual piece within that genre. Since Chopin only composed 3 solo sonatas, Jed will give an individual recording recommendation for each one. Here are his picks.
My choice for a desert island recording of the Chopin Second Sonata, the Funeral March Sonata, probably won't come as a surprise to many pianophiles, because the recording that Sergei Rachmaninoff made in 1930 has been kind of a gold standard for years. Now, if you tried to play this way in a competition now, you get knocked out of the first round because the playing is so individual. He takes so many liberties. He changes a lot of dynamics and phrasings. Of course, most famously in the Funeral March, after the trio, he comes back and he plays fortissimo, whereas Chopin marks piano, because that's a tradition that was handed down from Anton Rubinstein. But it really doesn't matter, because you cannot deny the extraordinary authority of Rachmaninoff's pianism. And I don't think anyone else has nailed those jumps in the scherzo. Don't bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing. Has anyone else nailed that with such confidence and accuracy and without recourse to splicing? I rest my case. Chopin's first piano sonata, which is a student work, doesn't really get often played in concert. I don't think I've ever heard it in concert, but pianists do record it as part of their complete Chopin cycles. A recording that really stands out of the first sonata is by Leif Ove Andsnes, and how he handles the double notes in the last movement. And how he plays that slow movement in 5/4 with such melting legato, yet such shape and poetry and directness, I think really set a new standard in the piece. An honorable mention for the first sonata must go to the late, great Uruguayan pianist Dinorah Varsi. For many piano enthusiasts, as well as many pianists, Martha Argerich set a new standard in the Chopin B minor sonata in her Deutsche Grammophon recording in 1965, and also in a recording that she made for the EMI label in 1965, which some people think is a little better. I think I prefer this one. I mean, both are really wonderful. takes quite a tempo for the movement, yet the counterpoint, which is so busy, especially in the development section, never ever sounds cluttered or confusing. And then the absolutely winged quality of the fingerwork in the scherzo is just marvelous. And she really sustains the largo without the music just drooping on the vine, as it does in quite a few contemporary recordings. And I'm too much of a gentleman to mention one in particular that goes on for 15 minutes, and you know who you are, that pianist. But Argerich still remains the gold standard. I want to give an honorable mention, however, to the Chopin B minor sonata recorded by William Kapell. He worked very hard on this recording, and his interpretation has no weak links. Every phrase has been thought about and has been considered, yet there's a sense of singing to all of the phrasing, and there's a sense of continuity and structural integrity that comes across every bar. Now, what I find interesting is sometimes he will change color in a repeated passage and give it a very different flavor or articulation, whether Chopin wants that or not. And this is kind of a tradition that I don't really link with the other American pianists of his generation. It's a tradition that I link more with a pianist like Emil Gilels. And it makes me think that at this point in Kapell's career in the early 1950s, his style was changing a little bit. He was much more of a forthright, direct kind of player in the 1940s. Like, if you listen to his Beethoven Second Concerto, you hear the influence of Arthur Schnabel. But he was getting away from that a little bit in the early 50s in his Chopin performance, as well as in his Brahms D minor concerto. And had he lived, had he not perished in a tragic plane crash at the age of 31, who knows what would have happened. But this Chopin B minor sonata is quite a testament, and we are so lucky to have it.
Thanks for listening to the Chopin Podcast. If you like what I do, consider supporting my Patreon, where I've been posting bonus content with many of the guests who've appeared in this series. For this episode, that includes lengthy supercuts of scenes from my interviews with Garrick Ohlsson, Juliana Avdieva, and Jeffrey Kahlberg. There, you'll also find a bonus interview with Eric Liu, recorded in the fall of 2024, which includes a reaction to his performance of Chopin's Second Sonata from the Leeds competition. On the next episode of the Chopin podcast, we turn to Chopin's large-scale works for piano and orchestra, the concertos. As always, starring Garrick Ohlsson and featuring Jed Distler's recording recommendations. We'll be joined again by Martin Garcia, winner of the Concerto Prize in 2021, and we'll also welcome back one of the world's leading Chopin scholars and an authority on the concertos, Professor John Rink. Stay tuned.